What on earth motivated you to do that? Have you ever been asked that question? Maybe when I was a little more boisterous young person, some teachers, some parents, maybe I heard it from a high school principal or an occasional police officer. No. What motivates us to do things? So I'm Brian Raisin, hanging out here today to talk about this new supervisor employee. Oh, I'm getting it wrong, but anyway, Nest training. And so let me see if I can make this work. So today, let's just jump in and really quickly run through, and I encourage you to go back and look at some of this, but run through motivating employees. And I contend that it doesn't work. So hang on, let's jump in. So the topic today, I want you to understand just very quickly the basic premise, the theoretical construct of motivation, and then consider how you might personally approach motivation. So I've got a three-part video in here today. Let's just talk about this first one, the premise of motivation. Know yourself, your EQ, your emotional intelligence. How do you build trust, be transparent, vulnerable, maybe some empathy included in there, things that you know. But this is to remind you and myself when I'm in these conversations and having these moments. So behavior, largely driven by motivations. So from a leadership perspective or a management perspective, we need to understand that concept of motivation, what's happening. So in a graduate course that I teach in ASEL, our sister college ag communication, educational leadership. So here's a text from DAF, really good stuff, just a basic textbook definition. The motivation, the forces inside or outside that arouse enthusiasm, persistent to pursue a course of action, a certain course of action. Okay, pretty basic stuff. But in real life, it's critical for job satisfaction, for reducing absenteeism and turnover. These are the things that we're managing for, especially if you're supervising people in our organization and in an organization, in a volunteer organization where you might work or volunteer. It helps increase productivity, performance, and bottom line, get to our mission, the bottom line of what we're really trying to do. So how can you improve your ability to motivate people? Or is that even possible? Well, I contend even small conversations can be life-changing for some people, that your words and actions can absolutely impact lives and careers and family relationships outside of work, mental health, and more. And one of the most important things you can do to start is work on your own EQ, your emotional intelligence. And so my challenge, will you do that? So the quick reminder, and you've read Goleman, 1995, EQ, emotional intelligence, emotional quotient. How do you recognize your own and other emotions? How do you discriminate feelings and then use the information to guide your thinking first and then your behavior? That's some, I mean, I've read this, I've read the books, I've read, just finished Social Intelligence is one that is follow-up in 2005, I think it was. But I still need to remember these things to remind myself. So I call this other ways of being smart. Kind of like it was Kathy Cook, Wisconsin, just retired. 8 smarts. People are smart in different ways. And again, when we're thinking about people, we need to consider these things. So if you better know your feelings, you can make better decisions and motivate yourself and others. You can find empathy, encourage hope, improve interactions and personal relationships, meaningful outcomes. This is serious stuff. Of course, Goleman's thesis is outlined 5 basic things with the self-awareness of our strengths, preferences, resources, our why. As Simon Sinek, I've got the book somewhere here. Start with why. We regulate that self-control and channel our events, our moods and impulses and reactions or responses. We're motivated to achieve. We have that empathy, that social awareness, and then the social skills kind of wrap it all together. So again, go back and look, but you guys were probably teaching this to your junior fair board members. So anyway, so motivating employees begins with our own EQ. How well do you know yourself? Are you working on your own EQ? Have you taken self-assessment? You probably have. We're an extension. We do these things. Do you seek critical feedback? That was harder. What's your professional development? What's your learn list? Things that you have that you want to learn before you retire, or whatever it may be. You have that personal mission, because without that internally, then how will you drive or lead other people? Do you have a mentor or two or three? As we improve our skills, we can exponentially help and motivate others. So what kinds of motivations? Pretty textbook again, intrinsic, extrinsic, we all know this stuff. The outside money, power, prestige, where we work at the Ohio State University, But then there's the internal stuff, and the researchers saying which is stronger, and our younger people seem to be really leaning statistically toward intrinsic in their job choices and their career fields and what they're studying. It's more powerful and longer lasting. So the name of this talk, though, was that you can't motivate people because they're already motivated. And Fowler, she has it's not new, it's a fairly new book. So the real question is not if or how to motivate them, but why are they motivated? That's a fascinating thing to pause for a second and think about, because we're all motivated to get out of work early on Friday, to whatever it may be. So if we can start to understand the why, and here this invites listening, deep listening, storytelling, exchanging with folks we're managing or talking to. There's a lot to unpack there. So again, the research says the intrinsic stronger. So Fowler goes on and describes these four kind of basic components. So we kind of have these in our heads as we're talking with people. It can be really helpful. Competence, if we can help them either get or build or increase their competence in whatever the activity they're doing. Is there meaning attached to their work? Does it align with their personal goals and interests? Do they have some level of autonomy, or are we micromanaging? I've done that to my students, but I've pretty much figured out how to not do that anymore. I let them have some autonomy in the classroom and choice of assignments and things when I'm teaching, aside from extension work. And then impact, having that influence on strategy, on the way forward, the administration outcomes. We're all looking for those things. But Fowler goes on to say, and again, she gives us 4 ways to activate these intrinsic motivators. These are the critical pieces. These are the key. So can we combine, put on our charisma, and even if that's not your thing, you can most certainly think about how you're approaching a conversation with someone you're managing or trying to motivate a little bit by checking that attitude, your approach. And if you add the consideration, encouragement, looking to empower them some way, building trust, then you automatically kind of do that. And you don't have to be a extrovert, introvert, whatever. No, you can still have some charismatic leadership in your approach and in your work. It's pretty cool stuff. How can you make tasks more interesting? Assign different projects, choice. Again, I mentioned this, adding variety. And then the last 2, giving feedback. Let folks stay from start to end, so that then they can see those outcomes. That's pretty motivating versus some tasks that are separate or disparate from the other project or the larger whole. We don't see the end. And then again, reminding people, having conversations about the meaning of our work. It's not just a statistic. We didn't just who was it? Kayla, before she left, was working with camps to do some special needs or different ability to bring in kids, and so we could statistically say, oh yeah, 4-H welcomed 200 students over last year who had different abilities and were disabled in some way. Or you could hear from the mom who said, we tried other clubs and they They didn't want my son 4-H. Sorry, made a place for my son. Oh, that's attach that meaning, have those conversations. It's powerful stuff to motivate people. So the key question to kind of reflect on, how can you create an environment where folks are encouraged to flourish? How can you motivate in that way? Well, build trust. That's number one. Transparency, checking our assumptions. I mentioned that a minute ago. Showing a little vulnerability is big. Exercising some humility. I do this all the time as I'm working with my extension audiences, as I'm teaching graduate classes. I say, let's co-construct knowledge. Let's build this together. I want to learn with you all. And again, that assumption, sometimes when we're managing, we get that management mode, we're going to get this thing done. We have this conversation that has to happen. Consciously switch to human mode. And I'll show you an example of that here in just a second from Burnison, Gary Burnison, another guy I read. So here's Tammy Gore. I love this guy. On trust, the very first pillar that I had on there. You can't just get trust, you can't demand it. You have to earn it through action. And that takes time, one step at a time. He's basically a polymath. I love this guy too. Kouzes came and spoke at our leadership summit. Wow, 2016, time flies. Do what you say you will do. Number one way to build trust. He's interviewed millions of people, him and Posner, his partner. Great stuff. The Horshager. Just a couple years ago, he was, our extension guy. We read the book. If you haven't read it from Newark, go get a copy. They're floating around. It's a really good read, and it's got these 8 pillars of trust that really are a way to move us toward motivating employees. The topic of today's quick video here: clarity, compassion, our character, our competency. How do we do those, embody those things ourselves, and share them with the folks we're managing? Commitment, following through, the connection, making those concrete, again, listening deeply, sharing stories, learning about each other. Let's get to know each other. Another, Tony Evans says, and basically MLK said the same thing. Racism will disappear when we get to know each other. Contribution, how can folks actually contribute to the results? Consistency, doing the little things, or do what you say you will do over and over. Big stuff. So here's Burnison. He used an acrostic, GRACE, which is an interesting word. It's not just a religious word. Some people may think that, but it shows up pretty regularly throughout ancient literature and even today. And I love what he put with GRACE: have one, gratitude. It elevates spirits. And you talk about motivating, that's a way to do that. Resilience, show resilience, aspire to, encourage, moving beyond fear, and then empathy, that deeper understanding and really walking in someone else's shoes. Again, a powerful book. It's actually lying over on my table. I just finished it. So key takeaways today to motivating employees, if that's possible. Yeah. First, discover why folks are motivated in one way or another, and then work with them to get the tasks that need to be done. Reflect on the basics, those theoretical constructs, intrinsic, extrinsic, what's driving people. Consider how you might personally approach knowing yourself, upping your EQ. We know we can grow that by studying a little bit, by thinking about it, by practicing, by reading, building trust, and then being transparent, vulnerable, empathetic. It's good stuff. So, all right, that's video 1. I've got 2 more quick ones on this topic of motivation, motivating employees. And so we'll talk